Okay, guys, let me just settle this in right here. Angelo Christian here, coming to you live. I want to talk to you today. Hopefully, you can see me in there. Hey, guys, look at my shirt. Who's got my money? I got my money! I got to get my money, guys. All right. It's November 5th, 2016, coming to you live from Houston, Texas, baby. The land of the rich and the free. Want to talk to you today about pre-approval checklist. Yeah. So the thing is that when you're working on loans and you're originating a bunch of deals, you still got to slow down to speed up, and you really got to make sure that you're checking your checking your I's, crossing your T's, going through the credit, the income, triple check the income to make sure that your deal is going to stick. Okay, a big fake pipeline is not going to make you rich or make you money. You got to make sure that your loans are going to close and that you check everything out. So we have a pre-approved checklist that you must check on before you issue that pre-approval letter. Okay, or if you're doing a credit approval before they go put a contract on a house, check everything off your checklist, and you have that checklist in your pre-approval folder. All right, and so first thing is with for USDA loans, make sure that they're below the income cap for USDA. If they have, if they have 5 people in the house, make sure that if the 5th person that's going to live in the home, if they're not normally living in the home, what's the justified reason they're going to live in the home? Check and make sure you have everybody's income that's employed that's over 18 years old, and get all their pay stubs and their W-2s to make sure they're below the cap. Check and see if on the tax returns, if there's business losses, if there's unreimbursed expenses, if there's daycare expenses, if there's medical expenses, if there's disability expenses. These are all deductions off of the income cap with the exclusion of business losses or not. But you have to check the tax returns. If they own a business, you have to check the K-1s and the business tax returns if they own more than 25% of the business. You want to check out the property. With USDA, duplexes, multi-units are not allowed. A home with guest quarters is not allowed. A home with multiple outbuildings is not allowed. A home that's income producing is not allowed. Check the property online. Make sure a multi-unit condo is not allowed. A freestanding condo is allowed. Get the address of the property. Check it out. Make sure you have the right days for closing on the offer. 45 to 60 days for USDA, the right amount for concessions. Get that cleared up with the realtor and the buyer. Who's covering the closing costs? Who's covering the transfer taxes? These things are all critical, and you have to be communicating with the realtor and the buyer throughout the whole process. Make sure the buyer understands he's going to put up earnest money. He's going to pay for an appraisal. He's going to pay for an inspection. Communicate these things to the buyer. Follow your chart for concessions to see how much you're needed for concessions. Check to make sure the ratios are in line. If you're a sub 640 USDA, that you're below 29 and 41, you leave yourself a 2% margin of safety on the ratios. Always check the ratios many times. And if you're getting in pay stubs as you progress and you need VOEs, go back and check the ratios again. Check the credit report thoroughly. If you have accounts in dispute, if it's FHA, it's got to be sub $1,000 or it's a manual underwrite. Doesn't mean you can't work as a manual underwrite. It just means you have to check that. Check to see if for USDA, if there's authorized users, that if the authorized user is the spouse, you're going to be living in the home. If not, then it's a manual underwrite and plan accordingly. If you have a thin credit profile, one trade line, and it's open for a few months and no other trades, you might need reserves. You might need rental to build the strength in the file. The file could be very weak with only one trade line. Maybe you want to add a secure card or rental karma to help to boost up that credit profile to make it stronger. So check the collections. If you have collections over $2,000, that gets hit with a 5% multiplier. You may need to have the collections paid down below 5%, not to omit that, or get on a payment plan or just settle it. With USDA, on a manual underwrite, you really can't have any open collections. Okay. Remember with USDA with accounts in dispute, that even goes for medical. So you have to check all these things and get somebody to help check it with you. Either check with Scenario Desk or check with a senior loan officer or a manager to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So know that with FHA and conventional, they have loan limits. check on the website for FHA loan limits to see what the guidelines are, and make sure that you're not exceeding the loan limits for that area, that county. And you know, and so that's a very important thing. Check to make sure that if there's a foreclosure on credit, and if it's less than 5 years old, that you check with FHA Connection to find out when is their eligibility date, because a lot of the times, even if it shows on the credit report that the foreclosure was 5 years ago, it may be that, you know, they didn't pay the claim but a year ago, and you have to go off of the time that they pay the claim, which is 3 years for FHA. For USDA, it's off of the actual foreclosure date, so you're saved there. But you know, these are things that you want to check and make sure about. You know, and so there's all these little nuances that come up with FHA and USDA. With USDA, if you're using child support for income, you have to have 12 months canceled checks. If your borrower has a mortgage in their name from a divorce, the divorced person has to prove 12 months canceled checks of making the payments to omit the mortgage. So there's all these little nuances. If you have discretionary income, overtime, commissions, bonuses, you have to have a 2-year history. And if they've worked at multiple employers, same job, same line of work, you got to go back and get the VOEs to add up all that overtime or commissions and divide it by, you know, the last 2 years to get that monthly average. So that's very important. You know, make sure if your customer's bringing funds to close for down payment or closing costs, that you document where those funds are coming from. So that way you don't run into an issue later on and your deal busts because the guy doesn't have money for closing. You gotta really, you know, heighten your sense of awareness and pay attention to these things. Check them out. You have to be a forensic detective and go through these things and take the time to go through it. You obviously want to be very successful at selling and closing and pushing deals in, but you also have to check these things out as well. You got to use 2 parts of your brain, the fast part and the analyst part. And so, you know, that's, you know, just how it works when you're, you know, a top producing loan officer. You got to check this stuff out and make sure that you're going through this checklist in your mind just to make sure that you have everything correct. And I'm going to send this out today to email with a video and an email, so you always have this as a reference. And, you know, one thing that I want to say is, you know, and I'm going to include this hierarchy of competence. And so, you know, if you're new and you're just starting the business, you know, you have unconscious incompetence, right? That's the bottom of the pyramid, right? Where you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you're doing. You're just, you know, going through the motions, right? And then as you get better and you progress, you know, to mastery, you have conscious incompetence, where now you're conscious, but you're still not competent about what you're doing. So you're making the wrong decisions. The third pillar is that you have conscious competence, where you're conscious and you're competent, and you're making the right choices, right? And then the final pillar, the top of the pyramid, where you become a master, is where you have unconscious competence, where you've done this repetitiously and you don't even have to think about it. You can just fly. You know, kind of like how you drive home. You don't think about driving home because you've done it 1,000 times, or you don't think about going to brush your teeth or take a shower because you've done it 1,000,000 times. It's unconscious and you're competent. And that's the level that you're going for. But the only way you can do that is have the right mindset of never giving up and being persistent and keep going, keep learning from your mistakes, and to keep getting better. Okay? So, but be smart, pay attention, avoid the pitfalls, pay attention, and, you know, do your best to, you know, to keep getting better. I'm going to be sending out this today to your email with the pre-approved checklist and the ratios and the seller concessions that are needed for each state and loan amount. So please check your email today. Thank you so much for joining. Please check every time you issue a pre-approval until you funded, you know, about $10 million in loans and you become unconscious incompetence. Have this checklist right beside you to make sure, and you can hear my words or have the checklist near you to check to make sure that you're actually pre-approving a deal that's going to stick and close, so that way you can make the money that you deserve to earn and help people become a homeowner. Okay? All right, thank you. Peace. God bless.